Well, let's get some closing thoughts on South Africa's inclusion on BRICS from our panel and whether we can repeat success stories like that Nando's one you've been watching. Our experts tonight, analyst Moletti Mbeki, Simon Fremantle, senior analyst with Standard Bank, and Diana Games, vice president of the Africa Advisors at Global Pacific and Partners. Moletti, you just saw that insert. Can we replicate more of these kinds of success stories?
Absolutely. South Africa has a pool of skilled people, because really that's what the Nando's story is about. You have to be able to make the chicken tastier than my chicken. Yeah. Then I will buy your chicken. So you have to have the skills and you have to have the innovation, which means you have to have, in the case of South Africa, the freedom for people to experiment. All this dogmatism that we have about, the only way to run a mine is by nationalizing it, that's dogma. And that will not make you world-class.
And how detrimental has that discussion been?
It's hugely detrimental. I'm a political analyst, not just in South Africa, but to asset managers in the City of London, in Edinburgh. These are people who have huge amounts of money invested in our mining industry. They won't put any more money until there's clarity about policies pertaining to mineral rights, pertaining to ownership of mines, and so on and so forth. So we have to have, if we want to be competitive, you have to have a rule of law, you have to have an educated population, you have to assure the world that you are the best and that you can deliver on time. Those are really, at the end of the day, what make you competitive.
We saw new figures coming out last week of foreign direct investment inflows into South Africa having plummeted by 70%. Is it your view, Diana, that perhaps this discussion or uncertainty around policy has fueled that?
I think what happens is sometimes one or two big deals can make the difference, but 70% is certainly a very big drop. I think South Africa really has to lose the sense of exceptionalism, that we are somehow certainly better than other countries in Africa, that our relationship with the BRIC countries makes us somehow special, and face head-on the challenges that Moletti is talking about. We need to be, in a global supply chain, we need to be as good as anybody else in it. We can't be an exception. Otherwise, we will certainly lose out.
Are we cost-effective at the moment?
I wouldn't say so. There was a story this morning about a company closing down a refinery based on the cost of power. The rand is a big issue for companies doing business in South Africa. The cost of business is going up. The labor costs are going up higher at a more rapid rate than we've seen any kind of productivity gains. And there's a lot of those issues. And I think South Africa is becoming an expensive place to do business.
Let's get your views on that, Simon, particularly the issue around labour market flexibility. To what extent has that been hurting us?
I think to an extent, certainly all of these factors have a detrimental impact, and it's very difficult within a highly competitive global terrain and an increasingly competitive African terrain. For South Africa to remain competitive, we need to concentrate on our strength, as Diana said, but be very acutely aware of the dangers that we do, or the damage that we do to our attractiveness as an investment destination by certain largely politicalized rhetoric. But I think if you also look at the fact that South Africa's major advantages, and this is where it scores well in the World Economic Forum and the World Bank Ease of Doing Business Index and a number of others, is in terms of its financial sector, one of the most regulated and well managed in the world. Its infrastructure, which certainly for a long time is going to be superior in the African context. And when it comes to the cost-benefit analysis, a lot of firms will have to come to South Africa based on the fact that this is where they can establish a headquarters of an operation in a regulatory, in a manner which they're satisfied with, and the legal and regulatory systems are satisfactory to them, and expand northwards. And we're seeing some firms certainly doing that outside of the resources sector. Resource sector firms will go to source, and they have been doing that, BRICS and other. But in other sectors, the manufacturing, the consumer drive, which we're seeing in Africa, very profound growth in the consumer sector. I think South Africa still has the ability to attract that and absorb that. But at the moment, it's largely by default, largely given our strengths which exist on the ground, rather than the way that we're positioning ourselves to attract new investment. So it's in the manner that we position ourselves proactively from here on, which requires attention, because we do have the basis.
All right. In conclusion, and very, very briefly, how do we take this forward and make it meaningful for South Africa to be part of BRICS?
Well, I think to make it meaningful, first, we have to get out of the mindset that we're begging to be part of BRIC. The reality is that we have a lot of strengths. South Africa has a huge number of strengths. You know, we have one of the largest mining industry in the world. We have the most deep mines in the world, which means we have the mining engineers, we have the geologists, we have all the technical people, and we have the workers who can work, operate a mine 4 kilometers down. So we are a strong country where we are strong. So instead of us scraping and bowing, China needs our minerals. For every ton of iron ore or that you melt, you have to put a kilometer of manganese. We are the producers of manganese that China and India and the others have to tend to. So we have to realize our strength and drive harder bargains with the Chinese, harder bargains. If we need steel plants in South Africa, instead of exporting raw iron ore, we should aim to add more value to our. But we are not negotiating it. But we're not doing it.
Your closing comments. How do we make this meaningful?
I think, you know, one of the things with BRICS is that we have been chosen as a sort of proxy for the African continent, and I think we have to be clear whether that is what we are or whether we are in this arrangement to be South Africa Inc. and pursue that particular agenda.
Simon?
I think there are tremendous opportunities, not necessarily within the BRIC grouping, but that the BRICS represent. So let's be clear, when we look at the BRICS summit, let's look at it differently from the BRICS as a whole. And within the BRICS, South Africa can play a role in facilitating and enhancing BRIC Africa engagements if we proactively position ourselves accordingly, and I think we have the capacity to do so.
Thank you so much for your time. And a big thank you to our panel for taking part in this special debate. I've been speaking to analyst Moeletsi Mbeki, Simon Fremantle, Senior Analyst with Standard Bank, and Diana Games, Vice President of the Africa Advisors at Global Pacific and Partners. Now, after the break, Dylan will have your sports.